Hey there, Fiber Junkies! Welcome back to the Color Cauldron. I'm Johanna, the owner and dyer behind Potion Yarns and the host of this podcast. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much for joining us, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about a couple of different things. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about my awesome show that I had last weekend at Knitting in the Heartland in Overland Park, Kansas, and then we're going to dive right into looking at another tool that will help us when deciphering how to use our indie dyed and hand dyed yarns. So yes, last weekend was Knitting in the Heartland. If you don't know, every other year the Sunflower Knitters Guild, which is the Kansas Knitting Guild, has a show called Knitting in the Heartland. So it's just every second year. Unfortunately, it's not every year because it's really fun, but every other year they do this show, and it's basically just a weekend long full of classes. They'll usually have one, or sometimes this year they had two really big name teachers come in, and they teach classes. They also have some local teachers and people from the guild who are really, really awesome that teach crochet and knitting classes and spinning and different types of fiber crafts. And so those go on all weekend long, all day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They have classes. And then they have Friday night, there's a keynote speaker, which this year was Franklin Habit, which was really fun. I'd never actually seen him in person. I just follow him on social media and had read some of his essays and books and stuff, and I just had never gotten to hear him speak in person, so that was pretty cool. And then they also have a free vendor market. So if you don't take any of the classes or anything, you can just come in for the free event and just walk around and shop local indie dyed yarns, locally raised and spun fleeces. So there's spinning fiber from local farms. There's project bags and stitch markers and literally just about everything to do with fiber. It's a smaller venue, so I would say, I'm not even sure how many vendors we had, but I would guess probably 20 or less this year. So it's not a huge market, but the things that they do have are really, really cool. And so I was really excited and honored to be a part of my first ever Knitting in the Heartland vendor market. I attended for the first time back in 2016 at the last event they had. I can't believe I lived here in Kansas City my whole life and didn't know this was a thing because it's been going on for a while. But one of my neighbors told me about it 2 years ago, and so I just went and I took one or two of the classes. I think I took a finishing techniques class or something, and I went to the keynote speaker, which at that time was Stephanie Pearl McPhee, and then walked around and bought way too much yarn, and it was really fun. So this year was really exciting for me to get to come back as an actual vendor. I didn't get to take any classes because I was in my booth all weekend, but I had a blast. So I am just so grateful for all of you guys that came out and supported the show and shopped around, supported the local suppliers like me there. I know a lot of you guys have watched the podcast and you guys were there, and it was so fun and exciting for me to meet so many of my viewers in person. I had so many people that would come running across the room screaming Johanna at me and give me a big old hug, and it was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I don't even have that many subscribers right now. I'm still very new at this, just getting started, but it was just really exciting and fun to be recognized and get to connect with people who've been watching my podcast, and they've been listening to me for a while now and purchasing my yarns and, you know, going through the sock series with me a while back and all the different things. So thank you guys so much for coming out, giving me a little bit of a thrill, helping support my booth. I had the best show yet of my career, which again, Potion Yarns hasn't even been open for a full 18 months yet, so that's probably not saying a ton, but honestly, I was super impressed. I set a sales goal for the weekend, like I do for every show. I set, like, I really need to try and make at least this much. I'm going to shoot for selling at least this much. So I set kind of like what I figured was a realistic goal, and then I also set a higher goal that was like, okay, I'm pretty positive, like I'm 95% sure I can sell at least this much, if not more. But I'm really going to try to sell more than I've ever sold at a show before, so I set it almost double that amount. Actually over double that amount was my dreaming big goal, and I was like, okay, I really want to try to make at least this much this weekend. And then I actually sold almost double my dream big goal. So that was really exciting, and my dream big goal then was probably like 4 or 5 times what my bare minimum goal was, which was huge for me. So thank you guys so much for all your support. I know a lot of you guys wanted to come to the show, but you're not local and couldn't make it, and I get that. I want to go to every event I see online, and it's always hard when I can't, but I still appreciated those of you guys who weren't local being super supportive and understanding that the shop's inventory has been down the last couple weeks because I was preparing for that show, and then you guys sending me a bunch of well wishes and good luck, and you know, watching my live video at the show and things like that. It was just really, really fun to get to experience that and share it with you, and I'm so glad that I met so many of you guys in person. So I do have a little bit of swag I acquired at the show. I was super well behaved this year, and I did not go and buy a ton of stuff. I did buy a little bit, but I tried not to go crazy. But I do really like to purchase a little something at these shows, partly as mementos, but I really like to support other makers as well, because I get it. I know how hard it is because I do it all the time, and I do shows, and I love doing shows, but I've had really awesome ones and I've had really rough ones. I've actually not had a rough one with the yarn yet, but if you don't know, before I did this, in addition to doing hair, before doing yarn, I used to be a mixed media painter. I still enjoy doing that for fun now, but I rarely get time to do it anymore. But when I was first married, I got into doing mixed media art, like assemblage art and then mixed media painting. And I used to travel around and do just local area shows around the Kansas City area and surrounding suburbs and things. And I never got very good with it, and it never really took off. Like, I was just starting to build momentum with that when the yarn came along, and I just really felt that this was a better fit for me than the painting was. And honestly, it's a lot easier to make a living with this than with fine art. So I switched, and I have never regretted that decision. Sometimes I miss the art. I really did love it, but this is definitely a better fit for me. But having said that, I had some really great shows with the art and some really awful shows with the art where you're just sitting there all weekend and nobody buys your stuff. And so I know how hard that can be. And so just because of that, as well as I really do like to support other makers, and if I see something I really like and it's done by another indie dyer or a project bag maker or a local farmer or something, I really like to try to support them, because I think that all of us entrepreneurs coming together and supporting each other is really powerful and really strong. So I did purchase a few little goodies. The first thing is, there's an indie dyer in Odessa, Missouri, which is not very far from Kansas City, called Nerd Girl Yarns. She's been around for like 8 or 9 years, so you probably have heard of her. Her name's Krista, and here's her tag, her little logo. I have purchased yarn from her before. Actually, my first yarns ever were purchased from her at the Kith which is Knitting in the Heartland, K-I-T-H, Kith. That was 2 years ago when I went. I purchased like 3 or 4 of her skeins. So I got another of her sparkle skeins. This one is just a bunch of really hot pinks and purples and silver stellina. It's really, really pretty. And it's called Let's Go Crazy. And that's kind of how I felt. If you guys have been watching for a while, you know that I talk a lot about two-color brioche lately, because I'm obsessed with two-color brioche at the moment, especially the big shawls like Stephen West and Suzanne Summers and some of those people are doing. So I totally purchased this because I want to make a two-color brioche shawl with it. I don't know what I'm going to put with it, but I think it would be amazing. And I just liked the really bright, fun colors. I've been feeling a real need for like neons and brights in my life lately, so this came home with me because I just had to have it. It was so bright. So that's one thing. I also have been talking a lot about sock blanks lately, and I just did a shop update post-show on Wednesday this week, and I had some of my sock blanks that did not sell, and I sold several at the show as well. Don't worry, I'll be painting more. But I had to get this one. I don't know if you can see this, but it's not really like a specific design. It's not painted with a specific shape or design like a lot of mine are. It's just a fun, crazy, speckly background. Lots of bright colors, really, really fun. And it is also a sparkle yarn. I'm obsessed with sparkly things as well, so it has just a tiny little hint of silver stellina in it. Very, very small amount, but it is shimmery and sparkly. And it is a single knit rather than a double knit, so it's either going to make, I don't think I'm going to make socks with it. I think I might try putting it in like a fade sweater or maybe in a shawl or something. I'm not sure yet. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I just know I had to have it because it was gorgeous. And I got that from another indie dyer called Tracy, Tracy Bunkers there. She has Bunkers hand-dyed yarn and fiber, and she's been doing it, she said, for like almost 30 years, I think, and she's based out of Lawrence, Kansas. So I'll put a link to her website below so you can check out her stuff, because she is very talented. She has amazing sock blanks, and I wanted to buy some of her spinning fiber, but I told myself I wasn't going to buy any more fiber at the show because I am such a slow spinner, having only done it for a year and not consistently in that time. Probably only consistently for like 2 or 3 months out of a whole year. So I'm trying to not purchase any more fiber because I went a little crazy at Flyaway last month, and well, I say crazy, I only bought 3 things, but I already had a suitcase, a vintage suitcase full of spinning fiber I haven't even touched yet. So I am not going to be purchasing any more fiber for a while, but I just had to have that sock blank because I thought it was amazing. And then I really could not resist. I did a trade with another gal there. One of the other vendors does embroidery and transfers on pretty much anything you want embroidered or transferred, but she was selling t-shirts and bags and knitting notions pouches and different things like that. And you could get a custom-made slogan like your name or something that you wanted it to say, or you could get some of her stock phrases. So I got a t-shirt that's hot pink and says in rhinestones across the front, "That shit will block right out." I could not resist it because that's my mantra. I am definitely like a non-perfectionistic knitter, and of course I'm also not a big blocker, so I found that funny, but I just thought it was hilarious. So I got a t-shirt, and then she also made me a custom collapsible basket. She has these awesome rad baskets that collapse down, but they have this nice like sturdy frame and then a canvas, and it has these little pockets on the inside you can stick all your stuff in, and it's just really handy. And she put a custom Potion Yarns phrase for me out of this drippy font that looks like blood running down. I thought it was so cool. So this might be my favorite thing I got at Kith. I'm so stoked, and it holds so much yarn, it's crazy. So, and right now I have my new colorway that I created this week, actually. This is a brand new colorway that I put in the shop update this week. This is on the gold stellina base, so it's a sock yarn with superwash merino nylon and gold stellina, and then it's got sections of deep black and then all these bright, fun, crazy neon speckles. And this was actually created for a customer at Kith. I had a lady come through my booth who was wanting a specific yarn for a specific pattern. She showed me a picture out of yarn someone else had knit, and she was like, "I like this idea. I want it to knit up like that, where it's got some bold sections and then lots of speckles, but it isn't like striping or anything. And I just don't like orange or yellow, but I want something similar but in different colors." So we kind of chatted around, and then I felt pretty confident. I don't usually take custom orders. That's the thing. I get asked all the time to do custom orders, and I don't do them. So I usually just politely say no, but you know, you're welcome to send me inspiration photos of something you like, and sometimes I use the inspiration photos my customers send me. Sometimes I'm not inspired and I don't use them, or I put them in the library to see if I get inspired later, but I don't do a custom order. Like if you're like, "Hey, can you match yarn color to my hair color?" Nope, sorry, I don't. I just create. I find that that's too limiting, and my creative process, when I get inspired for something, quite frequently the end result does not look too close to what I started with, because I'm very much a free flow artist, and as I'm going, I will often get new ideas and go in different directions, or something won't work out as well, and I'll be like my Swamp Witch colorway was totally going to be just this mossy, earthy tonal, and it turned out looking like vomit, so I speckled the heck out of it, and now it's this gorgeous, beautiful speckle, but it's totally different than the direction it started. And that happens quite frequently, so I tend to like to just respect the process and respect the muse and just let it happen, so I don't really like to take custom orders. But I felt really confident with this one when she showed it to me, and as I was talking to her and telling her my process, I felt pretty confident I could get something she liked. So the deal we struck was, I will create what I'm seeing in my head. If you love it, great, you can buy it. If you don't love it, no skin off my nose. I'll just make something I like and put it in the shop, and you can buy it or you don't have to. But because she inspired this colorway, which I'm obsessed with, it came out even better than I thought it would. I named it after her, so it's called Cheryl Got Sass. So that's the fun story behind this one. And I don't know why I called it Sass. It just seemed like a sassy little color to me when I was dyeing it. It's super fun. So yeah, that's what I got at Kith. I did get some stitch markers and some fun, crazy things too from from Sexy Knitter, Sarah, was there as well. She's always there, and she makes some of my favorite stitch markers, and she had these darling little stitch markers. I don't know if you can see these, but they look like little, like this one looks like a cupcake. There's some that look like ice creams, little lollipops. They're just like little candy and ice cream soda shoppy type, just super fun little crazy things. So those stitch markers had to come home with me as well. Not that I need more stitch markers because I have them coming out my ears, but I'm a sucker for a cute stitch marker. I did want to get sock blockers and a new project bag or two, and I actually did not come home with any of those. Not because there weren't great project bags there. I found several I liked, but I was really trying to be good and not spend a lot of money. I was trying to make money, not spend it. So I really limited my purchases this year, and then nobody had sock blockers that I saw, at least, so I did not purchase any. My husband keeps saying he's going to make me some, but so far we have not had the time to actually make that work out. We've been crazy busy, so we'll see. Still hoping for my sock blockers one of these days. And then I want mitten or glove blockers too. I've seen those ones and I love them as well. Okay, so let's get down to the meat and potatoes of why we're here today. We started last week, or 2 weeks ago technically. Last week I didn't have one because of Knitting in the Heartland. I just had my little slideshow. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. But 2 weeks ago I started talking about tonals and how to define like hand-painted versus variegated versus speckled, ombre and gradients, etc. Different types of yarn. And I told you that we were going to keep looking at several different ways that we could be more comfortable working with indie-dyed yarns and hand-dyed yarns. So we're going to continue that today, and it's going to be a shorter video this time than last week, but I just wanted to show you the difference that it makes where you twist your skeins. So let's take a look at a couple batches of yarns. You may have noticed a lot of indie dyers will put up multiple skeins in a photo to kind of show this to you, and I've started trying to do that. I try to put multiple skeins of the same colorway next to each other in photos as often as possible these days because I want you to see how they can be really different. But you may have noticed sometimes you go into a fiber festival or a yarn shop and you see some indie dyed yarn, and you go and you start to look through it, and you'll notice one skein has just all this pink and purple and kind of a faded, there's lots of white flashes through it. And you're like, that's really pretty, I want another one of those. But all they have left is super deep and saturated. Don't quite look the same. Or there's all this black at the top and a little more like crazy there, but they don't really look exactly, they're not identical, right? But they all say they're the same colorway. If the dyer gives a dye lot, which I personally don't, but if the dyer has a dye lot, and you look at it and you're like, yeah, it says it's all from the same dye lot, what the heck? What's going on? Couple of things. First of all, remember, independent dyers like me, which is what an indie dyer is, indie dyers and hand-dyed yarns are a different beast altogether from commercially dyed yarns and the yarns that you may be used to seeing in your local yarn store or a large craft store. So we don't get the same, because we're not machines and it's not a factory and we're not just churning out one after another of thousands and millions at a time, it's not going to be 100% exactly identical all the way through. However, most of the time, most indie dyers can get the same colorway to be close enough that you won't really notice a big difference. But that's also why every indie dyer will say somewhere on their site or will recommend that if you are using multiple skeins in a project that you alternate skeins to get a more even, consistent flow of color, so you don't have like one sleeve that's mostly pink with a little bit of purple and then one sleeve that's like mostly purple with a little bit of pink. If you stripe them together, it comes out more even. So some of that is just the nature of the beast. However, most of the time it should be really small changes, and a lot of times I don't even, when I knit with my own yarns, I don't alternate for the entire project. I only alternate when I shift balls. So if I'm coming to the end of a skein, I will maybe alternate rows for about anywhere from 2 to 6 inches before I switch over to the other one. Now sometimes I'll go longer than that, especially if I feel that one of them is dramatically different, but usually mine are close enough that even like 3 or 4 rows of alternation is plenty and you can't tell a shift. But I like to, usually I try to give myself 2 to 6 inches of alternating skeins before I switch over to the new color, just to be on the safe side. So I recommend that you do that too. If you're super anal and picky and you're really unsure that your colors will blend evenly, I would alternate rows every other, do 2 rows with one skein, 2 rows with the next skein, etc. Or if you're knitting the round, 1 round or 2 rounds with one or 2 rounds with the next, etc. And just keep alternating for the entire project just to be on the safe side. But just so you know, I don't usually do that. I usually only do 2 to 6 inches and then I'm fine. So back to what I was saying before though, the other reason that these all look differently, or could look differently, might be because they're twisted in a different spot in the skein. So I wanted to kind of show you what I was talking about with these. These are all from the same pan. Like I put these in the same pan, same batch, same dye lot, same everything, same colorway. But I twisted them at different places so they look a little different. Now when I do my yarns, I don't always, in fact rarely, do I pay attention and like make a mark where the skein is joined. You know how when you get a skein and you unfold it, it's tied together at some point? I don't make sure all of the ties are like facing down closest to me when I start painting or whatever else it is that I'm doing. And some of the techniques that I use, even if I started that way, they wouldn't end up that way, and it's kind of out of my control. So they might have them in different places in the skein anyways. This is also why I don't do self-striping and gradient, because you have to be incredibly careful to always start it in exactly the same spot and always do it exactly the same centimeters along the skein or whatever else. I don't do that. I do variegated and more random things. So here's one of the skeins of Her Wicked Ways all twisted up. It has the most black at the top. So I'm going to untwist this. Okay, so here's our skein. Pretty, pretty. So now I'm gonna just rotate it around a little bit. So let's say we're gonna twist it here. Okay, let's twist it up here. Let's see what happens when we twist it differently. I'll show you in a minute a little more detailed of how I'm doing this. Okay, so I just rotated it a couple inches to the side and retwisted it. Now this is not a super clean, fancy twist. I will retwist this when I go to sell it. But now you can see there's purple and black at the top. Kind of different, right? So let's see what happens when we rotate it again. Okay, try it here. Now we have pink, a little bit of purple, some white, and some black at the top. That's kind of different. So you can see that wherever we rotate the skein, it's going to look different. These two look different because they're twisted in different spots. Let's look at another colorway. This is one of my favorite colorways. This is actually a revamped version of an old colorway. When I first opened my shop, one of the first things I had in it was a colorway called Tequila Shots at Midnight. I revamped shortly after opening my shop. I started going through some different techniques that I was trying out some different dyeing techniques and trying to continue making the techniques I was using more efficient and make it easier for me to do more skeins per batch so that I could continue to grow as a shop and create a more sustainable business model. And through that process, I ended up changing several of my original recipes over several months so that I was still doing something similar, but I was applying the color in a different way, maybe getting more saturation or less saturation, maybe getting a slightly different result while using the same colorways and getting the same basic idea. But many of the changes were to make it easier for me to recreate the colorway again so that I was getting more consistent colors, and also, like I said, to make it easier to do larger batches of yarn. So one of those was Tequila Shots at Midnight, and I'm really happy with what I ended up with. I like it better than the original, actually, and it's way faster and easier to recreate, and it's more saturated, so it's awesome. But these three skeins of the Dryad DK, which is my MCN DK base, were all dyed in the same pan in the same batch. Again, now these ones look a lot closer than the one I just showed you, Her Wicked Ways, because you can see they all have quite a bit of the chartreusey green color at the top, and they all have this like bright limey green at the bottom with some black and pink. But it's a little different. You can tell that they all look slightly different based on where they're twisted. Some of that is because each individual skein is slightly different because they're all individual works of art, but some of it is because they're twisted at different spots. Also, I wanted to talk to you briefly while we're talking about twisting skeins and how to realize that they're twisted in different spots. If you're not sure about a colorway and you're at your local yarn store, or let's say a fiber festival like this last weekend when I was at Knitting in the Heartland, most of the time people don't ask me this, but I did have a couple people that were like, would you mind if I open up the skein and look at it? I never mind as long as people ask first. I'm fine with that. And the other thing is, ask first, and then when you go to twist it back up, I always prefer that you ask me, do you want me to twist it back up or do you want to twist it back up? And usually 99.9% of the time, unless I'm just crazy swamped with customers, I will tell them like, yes, go right ahead, untwist it, look at it all you want. When you're done, just bring it to me. I'll retwist it and put it back for you. Because I have a certain way I twist my skeins. I'm not anal about it. I'm not super picky, but most of my customers don't twist them as neatly as I would like them to be twisted, and I don't want to have sloppy skeins on my displays at a show or whatever. So, so this weekend I untwisted several for people and showed them what was going on, and then I just, you know, replaced it myself, or I fixed it up myself later. So I wanted to show you a little bit more. So I took off the label. First of all, the label is covering up part of the skein. So that's why it shows and things. It's not ideal because you're not seeing what's underneath that label. What is under the label? First you gotta know. Now a lot of skeins will not have a label that goes, they won't have what's called a belly band where it goes all the way around. They will just have like a hang tag. That's awesome because then you get to see more of the skein. I just like the way the other one looks. But now you can see there's a lot more pinky purple kind of like orchidy color in here than you noticed before, right? So now we have a little bit better idea of what this skein looks like. So don't be afraid to ask, but always, I just want to make sure I get this out there. Always, 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 always ask the owner of the store or whoever's working there if you're at a local yarn store, or the dyer or owner of the booth wherever you are at a fiber show or whatever. Always, always, always ask whoever's in charge, can I take the band off? Can I open up the skein before you just go and do it? However, most of the time, nicer yarn stores and fiber shows and things, they will be happy to let you look as long as you're being respectful and careful and you don't have anything on your fingers. They'll be happy to let you look because they know that you need to be able to see it, right? So this already, if I was a buyer, I would feel confident purchasing this without the belly band because I'm like, oh look, I can see all the colors pretty well. But let's say you can't quite, and I have had colorways before where I've twisted them up, and because of the way that I twisted or where I twisted in the skein, one block of color or one little section of speckles or something that I really want to show off gets completely obscured and is on the inside and you can't see it at all. So I always tell people it really is best if you can undo it. So in case you don't know, to undo one of these hanks, you just pull out the end like that and let it unravel. Now we can see a lot better what we're working with. Now we can see, okay, there's a couple sections of that chartreuse in the middle, there's some black here, there's a lot of this bright orchidy pink, there's some lime green, a little more black, there's a deep dark purple, there's some more chartreuse, there's some more purple over here. We can see all the colors, and you can see that there's sections that are a little more faded up and sections that are really deep and saturated, which is part of what makes this colorway one of my favorites. I love those like kind of vintage resist areas where there's almost no color and then the deep dark saturation right next to it. So this gives you a better idea of what we're working with. So I'm going to show you how I twist my skeins by hand so that if you're in a local yarn store and they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine, just twist it back when you're done, you at least can approximate. It may not be exactly, and everyone twists differently, so, you know, whatever. But here's an idea of how you do it. So you put the loop around your hands like this. I don't know if you can see that. And then you can twist either direction. It doesn't matter which hand you twist or which way you go. But for me, I like to keep my left hand stable. I only give it 1 or 2 twists throughout the entire process, and I twist with my right hand. So I just start twisting, 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 and you don't want to go too tight, but you want it to be nice and firm. And then I slide my fingers to the end. Now it's all twisted. If I let go at all, it starts to fold back in on itself. So I twist it, and then you can use your elbow, you can use whatever you have handy. You don't necessarily need anything else. I like to get a really clean twist, I like to put it around the edge of a chair or like a prong on my Swift or something like that, and I let this get a little slack, so we're going to try that again. But I like to use something to kind of help to stabilize it when I go to actually twist it up. So I have these dining room chairs that have these great little prongs that are just the perfect size, and then I slip it onto my fingers, pull it off, and then just kind of like run your hand down it and make sure it is nice. Tuck in any little ends. And then I take one end and put the other end through. So that way, if you don't have a skein twister or a fancy little doodad or a fancy little rig system at home, you can twist them by hand if you're out on the go at a fiber festival or a trunk show or something. And that way, and see, it already looks different than when I started, but it still looks beautiful. Most of the time, people aren't going to care if it looks differently, but that's why I always tell you to ask, because some people may not want you handling their yarns. Some shops may prefer to do it for you, and they'll say, I'm with a customer right now, but if you can wait 5 minutes, I will come over, undo it for you, and then I'll do it up myself. It's always best to ask, because you don't want to get in trouble, and you don't want to get something on their yarn and then have to buy it, or, you know, mess up the skein and get them all upset, and then you're blackballed at that local yarn store or whatever, you know? So I just always ask. But there's hopefully a little easy tutorial for you. This is also great if you're going through stash and you can't remember what the inside of a yarn looks like. You can pull it out, check it, or lay it out to see if it fits in a fade or something like that, and then just twist it back up if you're not going to use it right away, because it stores better in a hank than all wound up in a cake. So that's kind of a little intro on how to do that. But that's why I like to tell people to look at those skeins. Don't just look at it when you purchase it. Take off the band if you can. If you can, untwist it as much as possible. And for sure, if you've already bought it and taken it home, that's fine too, but when you go to knit with it, it's really good to untwist it before you cake it up and decide this is for sure going for my project, because sometimes there's things hiding in that twisted skein you didn't take into account, or sometimes it looks like there's a huge block of like chartreuse green, and then you open it up and you're like, that's actually not that big, that's only like 1.5 inches long, and it's only in one section, it just happened to be on the top of the skein or whatever. And other times you may think, oh, this only has a tiny bit of black, and then you open it up and you're like, holy crap, this has really got a lot of black in it. I need less black for my project. So it's really good to be able to look at it and identify whether or not that's going to work for you. So that's also why sometimes you may purchase a skein from me online, and you may buy Her Wicked Ways and you think you're getting a skein that looks like this, and instead you get one that looks like this. It's just twisted in a different spot, but more likely than not, it came from the same place. It came from the same dye lot, and even if it didn't come from the same dye lot, it's the same recipe. It's very similar. It's just some of them are going to have a little bit more, it's going to be twisted in a different spot, or it might be, you know, just a little bit different, a little bit off from where I photographed it. So that's why a lot of times indie dyers will tell you this is just a stock photo. The yarn you get may or may not look quite like this one. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong or that they didn't recreate the color. It just means it's presented a little differently. So I hope that helps you. I hope that gives you guys a little bit more food for thought. I am working really hard on trying to get some more great videos for this series. I have so many things to tell you guys in this series about how to work with your indie dyed yarns, and I only have one video a week, and I can barely keep up with that schedule right now. So I'm still working on more coming, so sit tight and be patient if you're looking for more tips on how to work with indie dyed yarn, because they are coming. But thank you guys so much for your feedback. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a video, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked what I had to say, and I will see you guys next week, but it's time to cast off. Love you!